There, I think that's it. I'm out. I'm sorry. So, has been a long-standing friend of ToorCon. He's been, I think, one of our longest lecturers, and he's giving a talk here on the state of the enemy of the state. So let's. I guess I won't announce where you work or anything like that. I'll let that slide. I'll let you deal with that. So let's give a big round of applause for Simple and the state of the enemy of the state.
Thanks, man. Appreciate it. Good morning, technologists, federal employees. You have any federal employees here? Government contractors? State representatives? Any foreign governments, intelligence represented here? Oh yeah, they're all here. Okay. Crazy people? Do we have any crazy people? Want to give a big shout out to some crazy people? I guess I won't be giving a shout out to any of the drunks. I guess they probably are the ones that aren't here. Oh, there's a few drunks here. Good. Good. Good deal. Fellow hackers, it's good to be back to ToorCon 8. The first ToorCon I spoke was at ToorCon 2. And I think I've spoken at almost every single one of them. I've tried to make it to all of them. And this is one of my favorite cons. I really have a good time every time I'm here. I want to apologize in advance for my little setup up here. Originally what I was going to do is I was going to have all my notes on the Windows laptop and run the entire presentation on the Unix laptop. I had somewhat of a failure on a hard drive, and after switching things around and playing with CDs, I'm now reading the notes off the Linux system that I've put together, and I'm running slides, which I put together this morning, which were supposed to be ASCII text, but you're just going to have to live with the fact that there's some girl that we paid to pose in one of our t-shirts on almost every slide. What was that? I couldn't hear you. Exactly, all right. Okay, this talk's entitled Enemy of the State, and or I should say, State of the Enemy of the State. And this is not going to be a fun talk, I'm afraid. This hopefully is going to be a bit painful, and that is because we, the hacker community, are the enemy of the state. And it's really an interesting thing that I'm giving this talk after Corey's talk, because all of his talk provides a lot of background that feeds directly into my talk. And we didn't plan it that way, but that's just the way it just seemed to have worked out. And in my talk, for the most part, when I refer to the state, I'm basically, as far as who is the enemy of the state, I'm referring to the United States. And I'm mainly using them as an example, but the state could actually be some other government or authoritative nation state of some sort. But anyway, the whole thing is part of the premise of this is that they are still, to this day, somewhat fearful of us. And as we've come to know, fear means enemy in a lot of cases. So what I want to do is I want to kind of summarize basically my whole presentation here with two words: wake the fuck up. Okay? I'm absolutely serious about this. I mean, we've got to wake up. Now, I'm not going to claim that you should trust me, so I'm doing my disclaimer now. I don't claim to be an authority of any kind. I am basically a hacker who occasionally turns his powers of observation and pattern recognition from hex dumps and packet traces to looking at other things. And I have been known to make predictions about how things are going to be moving in the industry, and there have been times that I've been correct. Now, unfortunately for me, most of my predictions are fairly wild and paranoid sounding, so I come off more or less like a kook, and tend to dismiss me and everything. But the good thing is I do now, and I don't have maybe 60% on my predictions. I'm about 60 to 70% right on my predictions. I do get a chance to say I told you so, okay, which is always, as we know, that's always a satisfying thing to do, particularly in our field when you're able to tell that, administrator, I told you that box wasn't secure, okay? But you have the bad part because the box got rooted, and now you have to go clean it up. But nonetheless, you do have some little victory in it, even though it's somewhat hollow. Now, I want to give you a few examples of what exactly I'm talking about. There's some bad stuff that I've previously predicted. In 1998, at a SANS conference in New Orleans, back when it was almost cool to speak at SANS, as opposed to now where it's really not cool at all to be speaking at SANS, I was describing how I thought a distributed denial of service attack would work, and how I thought that a network of literally dozens of computers could take down sites for literally hours at a time. And that was my, and that was just one part of talking. It was just more of an intellectual exercise than anything else. I didn't call it DDoS. Someone else later on came up with that term. I actually have no idea who came up with the term. But the thing is that about 18 months after that, it actually did come to pass. We had the first ones. I think the first documented ones were, I think it may have been George Mason University was, I think, one of the first ones that got a hit with the DDoS. And then, of course, February 2000. Hell broke loose, and we couldn't buy books on Amazon for literally hours at a time, and chaos ensued because you got to buy your books on Amazon. But the thing is I was incorrect in my scale, because I thought because like I said, I thought dozens, and it turns out there were thousands. There's actually been, I think, some of the larger botnets that have been uncovered. People that hunt these things down, it's in the hundreds of thousands. Now those are some really, really, really big botnets and whatnot. Another one that I did, now the hackers as terrorists thing is not really that much of a prediction, but I was at DEF CON in 2001. I had commented that the government, with its history, would come after us poor hackers with a vengeance, that we could all be classified as terrorists. Now, at the time, I said we probably had a year or two to prepare, that we need to start getting ready, and it was kind of this, goofy, rise up hackers, let's go, get them, or whatever it was I said. It's probably more eloquent than that, or hopefully it was more eloquent than that. There's a lot of drinking that goes on there. That's probably just what I did, and then fell over. I really don't remember too much of the talk. But nonetheless, just a few weeks later, on my 41st birthday actually, 19 terrorists hijacked aircraft and flew planes into New York, Washington, D.C., and into the ground in Pennsylvania, killing around 3,000 people. And a lot of attendees were busy dealing with missing data centers located in the World Trade Center. So I gave a keynote a couple of weeks after 9/11 here at ToorCon. And like I said, there weren't that many people here. We had people that were scheduled to give talks that a lot of talks were canceled because those people had to go deal with the fact that they had a data center that had been taken out by this. So it's kind of, or their companies had basically said, no one's flying. We're not going to let anyone fly. It was a kind of a weird thing that was going on then. It was weird because when I flew out, there was an armed guy on the plane with us. There's a U.S. Air Marshal on there. But I had stated that I fully expected the government to come down on us, intentionally or unintentionally, like a hammer. And basically, general public at large that was going to be affected horribly with this. And I was right in one respect, and I had no idea what the impact was going to be with USA Patriot, but that's exactly what happened. It was passed on October 24th, just a few weeks after that particular ToorCon. And it's not only created massive issues for average citizens, but it's also created a huge potential impact for the underground community in ways that really, truly paled my original paranoid rantings that I was giving at DEF CON and ToorCon that year. And to give you an example of what I'm talking about when I say hackers as terrorists, I had a conversation, this was again, just after ToorCon. Next big conference was CanSec West, and I was speaking at that one as well. And I had a fairly lively discussion. As you know, if you've ever been to CanSec West, usually the first morning, registration starts at 8 o'clock in the morning, so Dragos gets down there about 10:30 with his computer with all the registration info. So everyone's milling around down there waiting for Dragos to get out of bed. And so I'm having this conversation with there's a couple of FBI guys, and then there's a guy that I had met there at the conference from the Department of Justice, who's actually giving a talk, and so I'm kind of quizzing him, and I'm basically talking to him about USA Patriot, and so I'm asking what are some of the implications here. Well, let's throw out some scenarios, because I was really interested into what was legal and what was not. And I said, let's say, for instance, that I port scanned all the web servers in China and was looking for web vulnerabilities. I'm just looking for files on servers. That's all I'm doing. It says, pre-USA Patriot, was that legal? And DOJ guy and the FBI guys at the same time said, yes, that was legal. You could do that. You could look for files on a website, and it was not. Ooh, I'm losing something here. Hold on. Okay, there we go. And then I said, okay, how about post USA Patriot? Is it legal? The answer was no. Because what you were doing by scanning the entire address space of China could be interpreted by China as a preemptive act in a possible cyber attack against a nation state. You could actually be considered an act of war. Therefore, you could be classified as a terrorist, and you could be considered actually an enemy combatant. So you could, off to the pokey down in Guantanamo Bay and having a great time there with all the other terrorists that they've got apparently locked up down there. So, hello? Oh. So basically, if you couple USA Patriot, originally intended for fighting terrorists, and being used also to fight all kinds of other crime, as you know, USA Patriot has been trotted around the whole country, and they've been saying, hey, you can use this to fight organized crime, you can use this to do this and do that. And they've got all these lectures to all these local police departments on how they could use USA Patriot. Now you couple this with different animals such as Echelon, and some of the more disturbing things that have come to light, such as the whole NSA, AT&T debacle that's going on, and the basic suspension of habeas corpus, which I mentioned with the presidential authority to deem U.S. citizens as enemy combatants and say you don't get a trial, you don't get anything, and we can do everything that we want to you, and you can't say shit about it. With that, you can basically say that tonight we should all party like it's 1984. It's kind of creepy. Now, I wasn't unique or alone in these predictions. Now, I'm not claiming to be the Cassandra of the internet, if you catch the literary reference there, where no one actually believes your predictions until after they come true. But there are many of us that are saying these things and that no one really believes. But I'm still going to get up here in spite of all that and deliver some more bad news to you guys. Okay, got some more predictions. Now, first I want to provide a little bit of technological background for my bad news. And the poor souls of you that have followed some of my previous rantings may recognize some of these little tidbits, but they do kind of follow a logical flow. And since so many of you are new to ToorCon, you know, welcome to my, my crazy world. Now, as you know, the intelligent community is more advanced from a technological standpoint than the private sector, okay? We're going to take that as a given, all right, because there's things that they do have that are classified. Now, the exact question is how much. You know, being in the business, this business of security, and attending and speaking at numerous conventions, I've come to know a number of individuals from the spook world, and I've shared my thoughts and listened to what they have to say, and the estimate as to how many years ahead of the private sector the more classified and more secretive parts of the government range anywhere from 3 to 40 years ahead of the private sector. Now, when you're talking about such technologies as, you know, like magnetic encased faster than light aircraft and reverse engineering UFOs, the 40-year marks is probably pretty dead on right there. But I'm not going to go off as I have at previous ToorCons on UFOs on this particular talk. I'm sorry, I've done it before. I'm not going to do that this year. But get into that whole kook area again. But I want to talk in some realistic terms I think we all can identify with. Okay, so we have some things that we think the man, for lack of a better term, can do. And let's try to discuss some of these. I'll first talk about PGP. Now, to this day, Zimmerman, I don't even think will even speak to me because he thinks I'm retarded, okay, about this. But basically what it is there's a lot, I've spoken to a number of ex-spooks, including one that claims to actually have taught the technique. Ex-spooks have stated that PGP can be decrypted due to a flaw in the protocol. They say that the actual algorithms themselves are fairly, you know, they do what they say they do, but it's just the protocol itself used in the process, that there is a flaw in that process that allows the U.S. government to actually break this. Now, supposedly, the fact that PGP can be decrypted is not classified, but the technique by which you can decrypt PGP is the part that's classified. And then supposedly, not just the U.S. government knows about it, but also, you know, probably, we don't have anyone here from the UK, I don't think, unless they wandered in late. No one's in Corey's talk from the UK, but at least the UK probably has the technology. Supposedly the Israelis have figured it out as well, and you can just bet that there's probably one or two others. China's probably stolen it from one of the aforementioned. So there you have it. That's, again, just like I said, just kind of bear that one in mind. Let that one kind of just seep in for a second. Symmetric encryption and stream ciphers. The claims on these are fairly disturbing themselves. Supposedly AES, while very strong, can be broken. Now remember, we're talking about someone that has a whole lot more computing power and capability years ahead of where we are at right now, okay? The worst one that I've heard, this is the one that actually kind of really gave me a start, was that not only is SSL, speaking of stream ciphers, not only is SSL broken, but it can be cracked in real time at OC48 speeds. That's the more or less confirmed. Like I said, all these things I'm talking about, I've been trying to confirm the data from more than one source within the spook realm. So, and this was, oh, by the way, the OC48 speeds, that was about 4.5 years ago. Okay, so it's, you know, maybe they can do it at, you know, with an even bigger pipe. Everything is monitored. Now, this is one I had previously stated in public rantings that I believed all internet traffic was being monitored. And this was due mainly to my conversations and interactions with the spook community and in my line of questioning. And you know, not only did the whole AT&T NSA thing not surprise me, it did give me, it was one of these moments where I'm able to go to my friends and say, look, I told you so. I was right. And of course, you know, I still think that the actual reality of it, I think is just the whole NSA AT&T thing, I think it's just the mere tip of the iceberg. I think that's just a drop in the bucket. They'll shut that part down and there's like enough redundancy built into that whole thing that everything's still going to get monitored anyway. So basically everything that can be monitored probably is being monitored. Absolutely everything. And as I've stated in previous talks, in 1996, at a convention, not really a security convention, but at a convention where it was thought by the speakers to be devoid of reporters, when in fact one reporter was in the audience. A couple of individuals who worked for the government were lecturing on the CIA capabilities on the internet. Keep in mind this is 1996, all right? They stated they had not only installed a large number of remailers around the globe. This is in the mid-90s. Remailers were actually fairly popular, and as a thing where I could send a message to this box, and have stuff kind of pseudo encoded in a certain way. So when it hits the box, it's decoded and sent on to its destination. So therefore, it's anonymous mail. And so what the CIA was claiming was that they had set up numerous anonymous remailers under the pretext of, hey, everybody, let's fight the man. Here's an anonymous remailer. And I'm providing my services for free, so here you go. And they also claimed that the two largest free email services on the internet, they ran. Okay? Now, in 1996, the two largest free email services on the internet, doing this part, this is a fun part for me. It's kind of scary. The two largest ones were, at the time, USA.net and Hotmail.com. Okay? Now, I have spoken, there's a couple of people that are kind of like, no, not Hotmail.com. That's owned by Microsoft now. Well, it used to not be owned by Microsoft. It used to be owned by a CIA front company. And they're the ones that put the whole thing together. And I'll just let you think about how that could have possibly become Microsoft property. How much of the access do they still have? And they had access to everybody's inbox on that, okay? Now, I have had confirmation out of all the little goofy rumors that I have heard, speaking with spooks and stuff, this is the one that I've had confirmed the most number of times. Not only by people that are current spooks, former spooks, government contractors, and I was looking around, there's actually someone I was kind of hoping was going to be here at this conference that usually sits in the first 2 or 3 rows. I was going to ask her to say, yes, I'm not, you know what I'm talking about. Yeah. Who's also said the exact same thing, has actually confirmed it. All right. This is bullshit. Because you're saying, okay, how does this guy come up with this, goofy shit, okay? I could just tell you it's all bullshit and you guys could rest easy and won't be so scared. You'll be able to sleep better at night. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to tell you, I'll give you an example. This is a small example. It's not really a big critical thing, and it's kind of a funny story. So I'm going to try to maybe lighten it up here a little bit for you. This was DEF CON about, I think it was in 2000. And you know how you're at cons and there's like, the circle of people that's all talking about stuff, and then a couple of people walk up and maybe you know them and maybe you don't know them, and then a couple of people walk away and so forth and so on. And I was in one of those little circles of people that kept morphing, the conversation kept changing. And it kept slowly dwindling down until it was just 3 of us. It was myself, a Fed that worked in a department, I never figured out what department he worked in, another Fed who was currently assigned to, I believe, the NRO, and then but both of them had previously worked with the Secret Service. And they had a whole bunch of mutual friends that were still over there. And the funny thing about it was that the guy on my left thought I was with the guy on the right, and the guy on the right thought I was with the guy on the left. So I'm kind of baiting the conversation as we're going along. And the conversation is talking about what they referred to as the shit detail. And shit detail was, in fact, protecting the President of the United States, who at the time was Bill Clinton. And they're telling this story about how one of the guys said, because his buddy was talking about how he was heading out over to where the pool was. They're walking around on the White House and the property. They're heading out over where the pool was, and Hillary Clinton was in the pool naked with another woman who was naked. In fact, she was Marky Post from TV's Night Court, if you all are fans of Night Court. So apparently those two are naked in the pool together, and when he walks up, they get out of the pool and they run off, and and so it's like this big mess, and he's so disgusted because he has to help protect the Clintons from themselves, because his job is to protect the president. So he's got to protect the president every time the president and the president's wife do something stupid. So if they're like having Coke parties or smoking pot or whatever it is that they're doing, he's got to protect them from, because he's got to protect the office. So they have to kind of turn a blind eye to any crimes they see committed. So talking about how horrible it was. Now, this is also around the same time that, what was that movie that had Will Smith and Tommy Lee Jones? Men in Black, thank you, Men in Black. And of course, one of the funny parts in the movie is, of course, when they say, hey, let's hit the hot sheets, let's see what's going on, and they go and they grab all of the National Enquirer and all these rag papers, and Tommy Lee Jones is saying, best investigative journalism on the planet, and all this other kind of stuff, talking about how great these things are. Well, what's funny is that I don't know how many of you are aware of this, and you can guys can go and look this up, that the people that started American Media Corporation, again, is our folks in the CIA. In fact, on the resume of the guys that helped form American Media Corporation, it actually lists their employment as members of the CIA, that's previous jobs that they held. They leave the CIA, they start American Media Corporation. American Media Corporation puts out several rags, including one of them is the National Enquirer. So what happens is when there's a story that's getting ready to break that's going to look bad for the public, and it's going to, if they think something's going to break, let's leak it to the National Enquirer. National Enquirer will print it, and no one will believe it because they also print all these, Bat Boy and UFO stories and everything else. And so everyone thinks, oh, well, they're a bunch of kooks. And so mainstream media says the Enquirer's got this. Where's this coming from? This is bullshit, and they don't run with it. Okay. So what happens is 3 weeks after I get back from that DEF CON, I'm at the grocery store. On the front cover of the National Enquirer, Hillary Clinton in the lesbian affair. I pick up the National Enquirer, open it up, get to the article, and it details finding them in the pool. Doesn't name who it is. Doesn't name this Marky Post, but it gives all the same details that I had in the DEF CON 3 weeks previous. Okay? So it's little things like that, that happen when you're dealing with all these goofy, spooky kind of things that really make the hair stand up on the back of your neck. So now where am I going with this? Okay, so far all I've done is just talked basic paranoia. I do have a point. Okay. All right, Corey brought up WIPO. In 1996, the United States, along with most other nations on the planet, signed the World Intellectual Property Organization, or WIPO, copyright treaty. Now, this treaty was designed to enact legislation on a global scale to ensure that intellectual property was protected everywhere. The current number of participating nations is 183. They're actually meeting right now as we speak in Geneva. One of the things under discussion is this idea of broadcast rights. Good Lord, is that a train? That was weird. Now, the legislation, obviously, since we signed the treaty, the United States has legislation to make WIPO a reality. Now, what they did was they passed the Digital Millennium Copyright Act, which, DMCA. Now, the controversial part of the U.S. implementation of this WIPO treaty was Section 1201 of DMCA, which actually went farther than the treaty actually required. The two really interesting prohibitions were intended to protect copyright owners in the digital realm. It included a ban on acts of circumvention and a ban on the distribution of tools and technologies used for circumvention. Circumvention being you're circumventing digital rights management. There are some limited exceptions to these prohibitions, and these include security testing, reverse engineering of software, encryption research, and law enforcement, believe it or not, has for some strange reason, is exempt. Since 1998, which is when DMCA was enacted, the main muscle for its use, it provides a lot of teeth to allow people, copyright holders, to go after people civilly. But there are parts of it that actually outline criminal behavior. Multiple companies have invoked DMCA for various reasons, Adobe being an obvious one. Sony's done it, Apple multiple times, Microsoft and Hewlett-Packard. Lots of other companies have as well. Those are some of the more well-known companies. Most of the companies have just threatened the use. A few have gone to court, very few. Usually the threat of DMCA is enough, and if you want more impact on the DMCA on you in particular, I've got a link here for the EFF website. There's a white paper section. Scroll down, you can find some stuff about DMCA. That's fairly relevant and interesting. Okay. So, by the way, I'm going to trademark the term cyber apocalyptic and cyber apocalypse. It just sounded catchy because I want to kind of pump this up a little bit, give it some zazz because when you're talking about bad stuff, you need to make it pop. So I've been in marketing meetings too much. I'm sorry. You could say that our community lives on what is referred to as the fringes. We live on the fringes of society. And as we're on the edge of society, we are often in the unique situation of seeing what is going on before it becomes mainstream. And also as edge dwellers, we're often affected by issues that take months or even years before they really begin to impact the mainstream. So here's my latest prediction. Reverse engineering will become illegal. Now, this is not the first time I've made this prediction. I am just now revising my prediction. And I'm predicting that it will happen much sooner than I actually had anticipated previously. And I will start making some predictions as to what area will bring this about. And that is, of course, digital rights management. And with that whole thing that Corey was talking about earlier. And I want to start with a few data points to use as a reference. A threat to some of Microsoft's DRM solutions is a tool called, I think it's like Fair Use for WM is the name of the tool. Anyway, Microsoft has filed a lawsuit against a NIM. It filed a lawsuit against an anonymous person known as Viodentia, who, if you're here, do not reveal yourself. Okay, there may be Microsoft employees around. This person basically is a creator of this piece of software which allowed the bypassing of Microsoft's DRM scheme that's in Windows Media Player. Now, point of Microsoft's lawsuit is that this Viodengia must have direct source code knowledge to construct such a tool, okay? There's no way it could have been done otherwise. It could not have been reverse engineered. Now, of course, Viodengia is claiming that it was done all using reverse engineering techniques and has nothing to do with source code, and that basically the whole thing is a for Microsoft to bring the lawsuit forward to bring this person out of the digital closet of anonymity. Now, as this case unfolds, I would expect that Washington, that the lobbyists for Microsoft in Washington are going to be making some interesting moves. Now, what really makes this such a frightening data point, okay, thank you. Corey gave a number of interesting data points. What's such a frightening one is that Microsoft has only threatened DMCA before. They've never actually filed a lawsuit and gone to court. And if this thing goes the direction it's heading, then we can expect potentially more action from other players in a lot more aggressive way. And I would expect that, of course, they're going to be all over this from a DMCA perspective. And my guess is to prevent future things like this occurring, there will be a lobbying effort to eliminate some of the exceptions to the prohibitions that are in Section 1201, mainly reverse engineering. Okay, that's actually, I really truly think that's the direction that this is heading. Considering the whole direction the whole industry has been heading, which I can now skip like a good portion of what I was going to say because of what Corey had said earlier. That's basically where I think we're going. I've got one other one I want to bring up. I watch this for a warning sign. I would watch for the disappearance of commercially available reverse engineering tools. And I'm going to bring up a rumor that I heard. I heard this about 3 days ago. This is why I added this into the slides at the last minute. There is a rumor that Data Secure is going to stop selling IDA Pro to the general public, that they're going to be selling to the U.S. government. Currently, the U.S. government is their largest. That's their largest buyer right there. They're not making nearly as much. They're making. You can add up all of the sales, I would guess, that they're making to the general public and to companies and whatnot. And then that doesn't equal the amount of licenses that they are selling to the U.S. government. So conceivably, they could change their business model and take that out. There's been a number of recent events that have occurred within the company, involving leaks of wares and them getting all bent out of shape. And one of the rumors has come out of that they're potentially making this move. So if anyone, you don't have to stand up and say, I heard that too. Just come up to me sometime during the con and just let me know if you've heard something else. So because I'm real curious about this. Now, of course, this whole direction that we're talking about heading this thing, what are we going to do about it? And I've even gone so far as to look at places outside the U.S. to live where you can do reverse engineering and live free and happy lives, as you run barefoot among the ones and zeros. But most of the places where it looks like reverse engineering is going to be legal for a long, long time are places you really don't want to live, okay? They're usually really bad places to live. Remember, 183 countries signed this WIPO treaty, so it's kind of slim pickings as to where you get to live if you want to avoid any of that in the future. Now, there are a few things we can do. Obviously, you can support the EFF. They're fighting a good fight. Again, the AT&T NSA thing, that's a great start towards which is a very long, hard, uphill war. This is just one little battle in that whole thing. Support EPIC and FAS, ACLU. I know some of you are not as, left-leaning and liberal as the hippie pinko you see before you, but, bear in mind that these, we have to put aside our partisan differences here. you know, because the man's after us, all right? And, you know, because I hated what, just kind of, you know, this is the anti-government thing. I hated what the Clinton administration did, because we got DMCA, Child Decency Act, which was ruled unconstitutional, CDA2, Clipper chip. But then we got the whole, you know, Bush administration. I hate those guys just as much, simply because of, you know, things like USA Patriot, suspension of habeas corpus. I mean, there's a whole bunch of things, whole bunch of reasons why people should really, really be upset about not only what's going on in our government, but the fact that we're given this stupid illusion of choice where we can vote for either one rich guy or another rich guy. Okay, one likes to blow things up a little more than the other, and the other one's going to tax us to death. You know, what kind of choice do you really have? I mean, you know, when it comes to election time. But I mean, you know, still, we have to step up and fight against that kind of behavior. However, there are things that we need to start doing to change our behavior ourselves. We need to start encrypting. We need to start using encryption a lot. And I know I gave you that scary thing about how the government can break encryption and stuff. And the good news is that the FBI doesn't. You can't use that stuff. It's all classified. And you're not going to be taken. You're not going to be arrested based upon data that's been decrypted and then taken to trial. If you're taken anywhere, you're taken to Guantanamo Bay, probably. But so don't talk about bad stuff, or if you can help it. But nonetheless, use encryption, because for the most part, they can't be revealing the method by which they gather the evidence on you if the method itself is classified. That is why you have someone like Kevin Mitnick, who pleaded the Fifth when he was asked to turn over his PGP passphrase, and that was a legitimate use of his Fifth Amendment rights. Now, we're getting pretty good at a few things. We are doing things like we're using Silk. I see a lot of people on Silk. A lot of people are using, if they're using IRC, they're doing IRC over SSL, which, you know, at least people are starting to encrypt chat, and we're disappearing off of those, you know, nasty public IRC servers that have nodes all over the freaking planet that anyone can listen to. So I mean, come on, you know, that's all in plain text. At least we're getting off of there, which is very good. I would say use encryption for even mundane things. Okay, if you've got someone else's PGP key, I'm as bad about this as anyone else. So I'm going to start doing this. And it's usually with the modern, you know, mailers, you can usually set a preference of, you know, encrypt if I've got the other person's key. Turn that on. All right. In the little GUI in your mailer, or, you know, the setting in your config file that allows you to do that, and make that happen. I also recommend using Toor. Use Toor, particularly if you're going to continue down the road of doing reverse engineering, particularly as things get nastier. I know some of you have made names for yourselves as researchers by saying, you know, here's me, and I'm posting on BugTrack, and I kick ass, and look at all this cool shit I'm doing. You know, go through Toor, set up, you know, an anonymous account on some mail system. You're going through Toor, so that gives you some layer of protection as to who you are, and post from there. Create a new identity for this research stuff. We're probably going to have to head that direction as it stands. And just, one other thing I want to do here, and I want to take a few questions at the end. I wanted to give a bonus prediction, okay? Because this is, you know, wild and wacky in this talk. So my bonus prediction is key escrow. I think key escrow is going to happen. I really do. France has it. They've been doing it for years. They've been doing it for almost 10 years. Basically, if you have encryption in France, if you're doing any encrypting at all, you have to supply the government with a key so that they can decrypt the data. In England, England is now enacted this. In the UK, Tony Blair, who's basically on his way out, a fairly controversial part of the Regulation of Investigatory Powers Act, or RIPA, over in the UK. Now, even though RIPA was passed 6 years ago, this particular section was not enacted. 2 weeks ago, it was enacted by Tony Blair. And that means that it is a crime to withhold your encryption key from the police. So if the police come to you and want your keys and you don't turn it over to them, you're breaking the law. I don't know whether this applies to citizens from other countries. So it would be interesting to see. So, you know, all of a sudden that whole idea of using technologies like rubber hose all of a sudden makes a lot of sense. So there's my bonus thing. I would think that, that the U.S. government is finally going to say, hey, if we're getting away with it in Europe, and Europe has much more stringent privacy laws and everything, that we can probably get away with it here because, it's a country of sheeple who will believe anything the military industrial entertainment complex comes up with through television. So I want to thank you. I'll take a few questions. If you got any questions, I think we've got just 5 minutes or so. So if anyone's got any questions, just fire away. Yeah, right there.
In your earlier part of your talk, you mentioned that AES was broken by the U.S. government.
Yes.
Can you answer why the U.S. government chose to accept it as an encryption standard for secret and top secret information? They're not concerned that, whether they might not be concerned that other governments will be.
To repeat the question, I mentioned that AES was breakable by the U.S. government. Why did they approve it for secret and top secret stuff? The word I've been giving is that it's not being used for top secret stuff in a lot of areas, that there are encryption algorithms and stuff that have been developed by the NSA that are specifically used for stuff they really deem to be critical. Now, it is either that they possibly believe that they're the only ones that can break it. Maybe it requires some type of super duper huge ass computer the size of several city blocks, and they've got one, and they're the only ones that has the computing power to do it. Or I truthfully, I don't know. It was perplexing to me when I heard it. It really was. Another reason might be because if they're telling people that we're doing secret and top secret stuff with AES, that all of the evil people in the world start using AES, and now they can get their shit, which is another possibility. But truthfully, I don't know that, and no one's ever answered that question adequately for me. Way in the back, white shirt. What was I couldn't hear this. Hold on, let me get the microphone over there too.
Realistically speaking, how many of us do you think will just get fed up with it and move?
I think there's some actual talk of that. I mean, I already have friends that live overseas that will not travel to the United States. There's been some famous, well, not famous, but made some press, like when Alan Cox resigned from the Usenex because they're planning all their committee stuff over here in the U.S., and he says, I'm not going to go over there. I don't want to be a criminal because of what I do for a living, even though he's basically just working on the the Linux kernel for the most part. There are researchers that are in Russia that will only present at security conferences that are, I think the closest they'll get to the United States is going to be CanSec West, which is in Canada. So I mean, there's, truthfully, we have it pretty good here. I mean, overall, we do have it pretty good here. The privacy laws are a lot better in Europe, but it's a trade-off because you go to the UK and there's cameras everywhere, and then now they got this new thing with the RIPA Act, which they've already got it a law where if you create a virus, there's a law in the books that says if you write a virus or exploit code, that's illegal. it's not enacted, but there is actually, I don't remember the exact wording, but basically if you write exploit code and you're in England, you're in danger of being arrested. So, I mean, it's not a great place to live. That just hasn't been used. But truthfully, I don't know how many people will leave. And quite frankly, I mean, there's a part of me that would prefer to stay and fight. You know, I was born here. You know, I don't want to give this shit up. You know, we do have it pretty good here for the most part. I mean, we're all here. A lot of us flew here, you know, on big fat planes. We all, you know, eat sushi and, you know, we can afford Starbucks, for God's sakes. I mean, my God, that stuff's expensive as hell. We're there all the time. I mean, it's pretty good here. They don't have Starbucks in some of the places that are where you can do this stuff legally and freely, you know? That's the sad fact of it. One couple more questions. Right there on the aisle.
I was going to say one of the possible answers to questions of mandatory key escrow would seem to be obviously steganography, where there isn't even verifiable proof that there is a concealed message.
Yeah, using steganography is actually that's an excellent idea. Now, one could argue that it's possible. I mean, and I could do a talk. I know Druid has done. He's gonna be talking tomorrow. He's done talks on steganography. You could do a whole on just that. That's one other thing. Sure. If you haven't looked, throw that into Google. And look up what steg is and how you can apply that. Make that a part of your encryption scheme. I would layer things though. Make sure that whatever you're going to be, encoding into a picture or a movie or however you're encoding it, make sure it's encrypted first before you do it. You know, and safe encryption, okay, where you compress, encrypt, securely wipe the plain text. Don't leave it sitting there on the drive with just the header information deleted. So the feds can come in and confiscate it. Oh, here's another thing too, one other word of warning in case you're worried about the feds confiscating your computer. There's a new tool called SSDeep. This is a freeware tool. You know how they'll do like MD5 hashes of files and be able to identify files based upon their existence on your drive, but if you've overwritten parts of them, then it basically negates it. SSDeep works on portions of files and does fingerprint. It's like fuzzy MD5 fingerprinting of files and everything. So it's being used. Look out for that. That's kind of a interesting little tidbit. I should have saved that for the lightning talk. Sorry. One more question. Who? Here?
Yeah. Just with regards to the steganography, when Niels Provost was in grad school, he did a survey of tools and found they all sucked and were easily detectable. So if somebody wants to write a really good steg tool, that would be great.
Yeah, the stuff that, look up, just for a reference on that, www.outguess.org. And that's Neil's website where he's got the tools that he uses to do steg, the tools he uses to break steg in pictures, and a few other interesting tidbits that you guys would probably find fairly interesting. And yeah, I actually contributed to some of the research. As many of you, probably have, as I do, huge porn collections. I immediately turned my steg stuff, these steg detection tools on this massive porn collection, which I was collecting and thinking in the future I'll probably want to see if there's steg in it. That was the only reason I was collecting it, I swear. But nonetheless, it was funny. I actually did find some steg in one file, and that was a file that was got off of desktopgirls.net, and it was a picture of Sandra Bullock, and there was actual steg in it, which was kind of weird. I went ahead and I actually turned that over to. This is right after 9/11 when I found it. I actually got real patriotic and turned it over to the feds and say, this is where I found this thing. It got uploaded, something in it. I never heard back anything, but I didn't expect to anyway. But anyway, I'm going to have to stop. My time's up. We want to keep on schedule on the con. So anyway, thanks a lot. I appreciate the time, and I'll see you guys again.